Now, beta, next I'm taking you to the AIS, the Automatic Identification System. So this AIS is also dependent upon the GPS system. It cannot work without a GPS. So we will see what is this AIS system, what is the principle on which it works. The principle is known as SOTDMA. So we will see what is this SOTDMA principle, then what is the information which is transmitted and received in the AIS, and then the some techniques like pseudo AIS which are coming into existence now, being used in some of the places. So that is what we are going to see. So let me put up the presentation. In this presentation, we are going to discuss and learn about the AIS, Automatic Identification System. Now, before we go into the working and operation of the system, it is always a very good practice to go into the history of the equipment. Why was this equipment required? Now, some of the important reasons which justify the need for automatic identification system were: number one, lack of positive identification was one very troublesome weak link in the chain of communication and identification before the AIS. We had the radar available to us to detect the targets close to the ship, but the radar did not identify the target positively. Radar could give us the range and bearing of the target, but we were not able to positively identify the target. AIS has taken care of this problem. With AIS, the target is automatically identified. Other limitations which were there in radar as well as ARPA also necessitated the coming in of the AIS. Now, the radar as well as the ARPA equipment are dependent upon the state of weather. With the weather becoming bad, the effectiveness, the performance of radar as well as ARPA both go down. The efficiency and performance of the radar equipment also keeps on changing and needs to be monitored regularly and carefully. The radar as well as ARPA have problems like losing targets. In case a target is altering its course, there is a tendency that the target may be lost. There is a problem of swapping of target. When two targets being tracked by ARPA come close to each other, sometimes the targets jump, the targets are swapped, and for some amount of time, the information on the ARPA is not displayed correctly. Also, as the performance standards require, there is a 3-minute time limit relaxation which is given for ARPA. ARPA can take up to 3 minutes of time to display the target data. And with radar and ARPA, there is a issue of blind and shadow sector. With the funnel, with the mast, with the cranes, it is possible that a certain part could be a blind sector or a shadow sector for the radar, and that could hamper the identification and information about the targets in our vicinity. Now, AIS takes care of all these limitations. Another very important reason why the AIS came in was the security concerns. We had the Twin Tower attacks, and with those attacks, we had the arrival of ISPS regulations. And these ISPS regulations made the AIS as a mandatory equipment. It emphasized that there is a need for automatic and positive identification of ships in the vicinity, and that was what led to the bringing in of AIS into the maritime domain. Let's now go into the principle on which the AIS system works. The principle on which AIS works is known as SOTDMA, and it is very similar to the system which we use in our mobile phones also. The system which is used in mobile phones is the CDMA system. It is one of the systems which is used for mobile communications. CDMA stands for Code Division Multiple Access. The system on which the AIS works is SOTDMA, and it stands for Self-Organizing Time Division Multiple Access. Now, as is clear from the name itself, that this system is self-organizing. That means it does not require a master or a controller as is required in the mobile systems. Our system, the AIS system, does not require any operator, controller, or a master. The second term is time division. This system is based on dividing the time into multiple slots. So these slots are acting like turns for all the ships to transmit their data. So that is why the term time division. This system works on dividing the time into small slots of time. And the last term in the name is multiple access. That means it allows multiple users to access the system at the same time, and information can be passed on or communicated between multiple systems within a short duration of time. Now, as we discussed just now, the SOTDMA is fully automatic, and it works without any involvement from the duty officer, or it works without any human intervention. It does not suffer from problems of interference. There is no interference between the stations, as the time slots are well defined, and every station has a different time slot. And also the system is able to and is having the capability of resolving any conflicts if they arise on its own. Thus it is called as self-organizing. It divides a unit of 1 minute of time into a number of slots. The minimum number of slots as per the IMO standards are 2000 slots in a minute. So these are slots or time schedules which allow different stations to transmit their information, and every station is able to access the information of everyone else in that particular region in a very short span of time. Now, when we are dividing the time into slots, we are basically talking of the resolution of milliseconds. So when we have this much of time accuracy, normal clocks are not going to work for this particular system. So we need the accurate time signals from GPS. The GPS time is very, very accurate. The GPS positioning is dependent upon the clocks which are there in the GPS system. So these highly accurate time signals from the GPS are utilized for setting up this SOTDMA system of the AIS. So from here it becomes clear to us that the AIS is dependent on the GPS for its operation. If the GPS fails, the AIS system will not be able to work at all. Now, for this purpose, the AIS equipment which we have on board is either given a feed from the ship's GPS, or if it is a high-tech equipment, it could have its own positioning capabilities, or it could have its own GPS fitted inside the unit. Now, this diagram which you see basically summarizes the entire operation which we just now discussed into one picture. Let us understand this diagram. Let's assume that there is a particular area, and in that particular area we have two ships. So ship A, the red ship which you see here, and ship B, the green color ship which is there. Let's say it's a anchorage area, and there is no other station, the AIS station in VHF range. Let's say a third ship enters in that area, that is ship C. It has entered into this area. There is no other ship anywhere. Now the AIS of ship A and ship B was already working. Ship C has entered in this area just now. So how does the system work? The AIS present on ship C, the blue color ship, first it goes into the reception mode. It tries to receive the data transmitted by the ships which are already present in that area. So ship C is going to wait for the transmission from ship A as well as ship B. Now this bar which you see on top, it basically represents the time slots made with the help of GPS time signals, which is being followed by ship A and ship B. So you see each time slot represents 26.6 milliseconds. So in this particular time slot, the transmission is made by the red ship, ship A, in this particular slot. Now the AIS system is such that whenever any station transmits the information, at the same time, it books a slot in the future. So you see this particular slot is booked by the red ship for its next transmission. So you can see it here also. The AIS of ship A sends the position message in one time slot. At the same time, it reserves another time slot for the next position message. So ship C, the blue color ship which has just entered the area, receives this information. Now after some time, the ship B transmit its data at this particular slot. So in this green slot, it transmits its own data, and then you see there is a future slot which is booked for its next transmission. Now when both ships have done completed their transmission, the ship C has their data, so the navigator who is there on ship C will be able to see the data for both these ships, and at the same time ship C is also aware of the future time slots where these two stations are going to make their next transmission. So ship C is immediately able to find out the vacant slots, and in one of these vacant slots, now the AIS of ship C fires up and transmit its own data. So both these ships, ship A and ship B, receive the data of the new entry vessel, that is the blue color ship C. And when this transmission is made by ship C, at the same time it reserves a slot in the future where it is going to make its next transmission. So the same procedure is repeated by all other AIS equipped ships, and they keep on finding these empty slots. They keep on transmitting their data, booking one slot into the future and letting all other stations know which slots are vacant where the data can be transmitted. So I told you there are minimum 2000 slots in a minute. So in a minute, minimum 2000 stations would be able to transmit the data. Now at this particular time, as far as navigation is concerned, I hardly see any areas where you will have 2000 ships in the VHF range. It is possible if the AIS is fitted over each and every single boat or something like that. But even then, the system is quite equipped to handle this much of traffic. So up to 2000 stations per minute is not a problem at all. Even if the number of stations try to increase, the AIS has further capabilities to handle that extra pressure also. So this is the SOTDMA principle. Now, something related to the operation of AIS on board. AIS in the normal circumstances should always be in operation on board. Now, in case the master believes that the operation of AIS might compromise the safety or security of the ship, it may be switched off. It is within the authority of the master. Now, this might be the case in sea areas where pirates and armed robbers are known to operate. Whenever taking actions of this kind, it should be recorded in the ship's logbook together with the reason why it is being done. AIS should be restarted as soon as the danger is over. Now, in ports, the AIS operation should be in accordance with the port requirements. So in some of the ports, they are very specific about AIS. In fact, if your AIS data is not properly updated, they may put fines on the ships. Heavy fines may be levied on the ship in case of misleading AIS information. Secondly, every port, every terminal will have its own requirement. Some of them tell you to put the AIS into a low power mode, whereas some of the terminals or port may tell you to altogether switch off the AIS. Now let's come to an important aspect of what all information is transmitted over the AIS system. Now this information is divided into three data packets. The first one is static information. As is clear from the name, the static information is something which is static and does not change. The second data packet is the dynamic information. As again obvious from the name, this is the information which keeps on changing with time or from ship to ship or the third data packet which we have is the voyage related information. So this is the data related to that particular voyage which the ship is undertaking. So let's see now under all these three heads what information is transmitted and received by the AIS. So we have the under static information, we have the MMSI number, the IMO number wherever available, the call sign and name of the ship, length and beam of the vessel, type of ship, and location of the position fixing antenna on the ship, aft of bow, and port or starboard of the center line of the ship. So as you can see, all this information is static or fixed in nature. So it comes under static information. Now coming to dynamic information which keeps on changing, we have the ship's position, the time, course over ground, speed over ground, the heading of the ship, navigational status, for example, whether the ship is at anchor, ship is underway, aground, etc. This is input manually, and the rate of turn wherever it is available. So if a rate of turn indicator is connected, yes, it should be transmitted and received. The navigational status is also important from the point of view of transmission, because the frequency of transmission means after how much time a new data packet should be transmitted by a particular station. It also depends upon the navigational status of the ship. A ship which is at anchor will have most of its data which is stable, not changing. So the frequency which is required is much lesser as compared to a ship which is moving. So a moving ship will have to update or transmit its data at a frequent interval at a higher frequency. Let's come to the voyage related information now. The ship's draft, the type of cargo, the destination and ETA. Now this could be commercially sensitive information, especially in case of containers, ships like container ship or passenger vessels. So it has been left to the master's discretion whether he wants to display or transmit or broadcast that information to other ships or not. And the route plan or the waypoints, which is again left optional. This could also be a commercially sensitive data. Now, after these three information packets, there is an option that we can send and receive safety related messages. So free format, short text messages can be sent and received as and when required. So the capacity is, if I remember correctly, it's 121 characters. So these messages should be safety related and they can be transmitted to a particular station or they can be broadcast to all the stations in the range. Okay, now we come to a very important aspect of the system. That is the reporting interval for AIS transmissions. What are these reporting intervals? I discussed with you a little while before that the frequency with which the messages are sent, it basically depends upon the navigational status of the ship. For a ship which is at berth or which is at anchor, the data is not changing at a very fast pace. The dynamic data is also stable. It is not changing. That is the position, course, speed, everything. They are also not changing. The static data remains the same. The voyage related data is also not changing. So we require a much lesser frequency. The messages need not be transmitted at a very fast rate because the data is not changing. So if you compare it with a ship which is moving fast, let's say also altering its course, then the data needs to be updated fast. The frequency has to be higher because when you watch that ship on your AIS, and if the frequency is less, the frequency is not fast, in the case of a fast moving ship which is also altering course, it is possible that the AIS data may be outdated. The ship actually may be at some other location, at some other heading, at some other course, doing some other course and speed, whereas your AIS may give you the data which is already outdated. So that could lead to a near miss or a dangerous scenario if the data which you are getting from the AIS is not up to date. So that is why a reporting interval or a frequency has been set down depending upon the navigational status of the ship. So let's see these frequencies. A ship which is at anchor or moored and not moving faster than 3 knots has to send the AIS message every 3 minutes. Ship at anchor or moored and is moving faster than 3 knots, that could be a case when the ship is dragging anchor, or let's say you are moored to the buoys and the buoy moorings are shifting or they are just dragging over the ground, some scenario kind like that. So in that case, the reporting interval is 10 seconds. Ship which is proceeding en route with 0 to 14 knots, the frequency is 10 seconds. The ship proceeding with 0 to 14 knots and changing course, it is 3.3 seconds. Ship 14 to 23 knots, the frequency is every 6 seconds. 14 to 23 and changing course every 2 seconds. More than 23 and changing course, in all these cases, the reporting interval is every 2 seconds. So you see, as the faster the ship moves, faster the data changes, the faster frequency has been allotted so that the data displayed by the AIS is up to date and correct. Let us now go into the three different modes on which the AIS works. The first one of them is known as the autonomous mode or ship-to-ship mode. This is the normal mode of operation of the AIS, and in this particular mode, the AIS selects its own time schedule or time slot, and it defines its own reporting rate or reporting frequency. This reporting rate or reporting frequency depends upon the navigational status of the ship, which we just now saw in the previous slide. And it also depends upon the speed and course on which the ship is moving, whether the speed and course are steady or they are changing. And in this mode, data is transferred between ships in the VHF range. The second mode under which the AIS can operate is known as the assigned mode. In the assigned mode, a competent authority which is responsible for traffic monitoring, it could be a VTS station or a VTMS station. The VTS or VTMS station may remotely control the operation of the AIS. In assigned mode, the transmission frequency, the slot selection, both of these items are controlled by the VTS only. The assigned mode or the mode under which you are operating under a VTS happens in areas, say, let's something like Singapore Straits or other VTS which you come across. Now, it is possible that the AIS operation may be entirely controlled by the VTS. Now, coming to the third mode, that is the pooled or controlled mode. In this mode, the AIS will automatically respond to interrogation messages from a ship or a competent authority like a naval ship. The response is transmitted on the same channel where the interrogation message was received. Operation in the pooled mode or controlled mode does not conflict with the operation in other two modes. Now, what does this mean? This basically means that if there is a competent authority which wants to capture the AIS data of a ship, it could be a shore station, like at many places you have military naval stations which collect the data. Like say, for example, India at our southernmost tip at Indira Point, we have a station which captures the data of the ships which are moving in that area. So they do not have to get the data from the normal mode of operation. If they want, they can actively poll or control the AIS of a ship. Now what they do is they send a target message. Now when that message is received by the ship's AIS, it responds to that message, and whatever information has been asked, it supplies that information to that particular station. It could be a naval base, a shore station, or it could be a naval ship which is collecting the data. Now in this mode, the message text also can be edited by the station requesting the data. They may not want all the data of a ship, they may only want some selected items. So in that polling message, this information is also contained and the ship responds to it accordingly. Now, this operation is independent of the other two modes. A ship may be working in autonomous mode, and at the same time the polling command is received. So it will keep on working in the autonomous mode without any interference. Now, as per IMO, there are three basic functions which the AIS fulfills. Number one, AIS is considered to be an excellent VTS tool for traffic management. Number two, looking at the security aspect, AIS is considered as a surveillance tool by coastal states, which is used for monitoring the vessels entering or transiting their waters. And AIS is certainly a navigational aid for collision avoidance. So these are the three basic functions of the AIS as listed down by the IMO. Now moving on to another new concept coming in, that is a pseudo AIS. What is this pseudo AIS? Now if we have a VTS and the VTS is having radar as well as a AIS receiver, the VTS center may send information about vessels which are not carrying AIS and which are tracked only by VTS radar via the AIS to vessels equipped with AIS. Now what does that mean? Let us say, for example, you are moving in Singapore Straits. There is a tug and a barge, a tug which is towing a barge trying to cross the traffic lane. Now that tug being smaller is not mandatorily required to be fitted with a AIS. So you will not get that tug on your AIS screen. Now the VTS has a radar station. VTS, the tug reports to the VTS. VTS knows that the tug is going to cross the lane. Now what the VTS can do is, they are picking up that tug on their radar. The ARPA is giving them the required data. What is the course, what is the speed, everything. What the VTS can do is, they can transmit this radar and ARPA information about that particular tug through the AIS frequency. So what will happen on your AIS screen? You will start to receive the data of that particular target. So even though the tug was not having any AIS equipment on board, other ships will still be able to see it on their AIS. Now that is known as a pseudo AIS. Now the requirement is that any pseudo AIS target broadcast by the VTS should be clearly identified as such. So there are some specific symbols which may be used by the VTS to show a pseudo target. There is a IMO resolution also which tells us what symbols should be used in the AIS. Particular care should always be taken when using information which has been relayed by a third party, because there is a scope of error or erroneous information creeping in. The accuracy of these targets may not be as accurate as the actual directly received targets by the AIS system. And the information content may also not be complete. Now moving on to the third usage of AIS. AIS as an aid to collision avoidance. AIS has the potential to significantly contribute to safety of navigation. It provides positive ID, positive identification of targets, along with their static and dynamic data, which helps a lot in decision making by the OW in ROR situations. It can greatly improve the situational awareness of the OW. It also assists in tracking and monitoring targets, as it provides information on CPA and TCPA. Going further in collision avoidance, AIS is a very useful tools for positive identification and helps in collision avoidance. But when we are using AIS in the ship-to-ship mode for anti-collision purpose, we should be using some precautions. It should always be kept in mind that AIS is an additional source for navigational information. AIS does not replace but supports the navigational systems such as radar, target tracking, and VTS. The use of AIS does not negate the responsibility of the OW to comply at all times with the collision regulations. So another important thing which you will see here is that AIS is not that much widely mentioned in the collision regulations as compared to the radar. There are some rules which are very much specific to radar. So it tells us that the weightage which is given by the call regs to the equipment is much more to the radar as compared to the AIS. So basically it is for this purpose which I discussed a little bit before, that AIS is a GIGO system, garbage in, garbage out. That means there is no way to check the authenticity of the information. If the AIS shows you a target at a particular place, it is very much possible that there may be no target and the target may have moved to some other location. But radar will only show you a target at that particular place if it is actually there. Barring a few limitations of the radar is much more reliable as compared to the AIS. So AIS is an additional source and it cannot replace the existing navigational systems. User should not rely on the AIS as the sole information system and should make use of all safety relevant information available from other sources also. So coming to call regs once again, rule 5 in call regs says every vessel shall at all times maintain a proper lookout by sight and hearing, and as well as by all available means. Now this is what we need to highlight here, all available means. AIS certainly makes a part of these all available means. Even though it is not specifically mentioned in call regs to be used, but these all available means give us a lead to utilizing the AIS information. So in the light of features offered by AIS and its advantages, it certainly forms an integral part of the available means for making full appraisal of the situation. Thus, it is not only desirable but also imperative on part of the OW to utilize AIS and enhance his or her situational awareness.